What happened?
I'm not sure
You
what
lose
happened, but
You lose the picture?
Sima, are you back up?
And he explained, okay, the dynamics of the region, and yeah. Okay.
For reconstituting the people. Sorry, apologize for any inconvenience. Hopefully, maybe the sound will be better. Go ahead, Sima.
So going back to the Ottoman Empire, and so the main way it was organized was after making itself also a caliphate, which is the successor of the Prophet Muhammad, and accepting Sunni Islam to be the main religion. It kind of organized the empire. Empires are usually made up of different cultures and peoples and groupings. So the empire got to be organized on the basis of the concept of millet, which is a term usually referred to the ethno-religious groupings of the empire. And so each of them also had the judicial power within the empire. So each of the ethno-religious groupings in the empire had their own internal education, social, judicial systems. And that's how it got to be governed. And it kind of also evolved and got to be changing, in particular after Napoleon's invasion of Egypt in 1798 or 99, towards the end of that century, beginning of the next century, the end of that year, 1798, 99, Egypt got to be invaded by Napoleonic forces. Napoleon also took some loot from Egypt and brought it to France, where you can see some of it, like the obelisk in the middle of Paris, and at the Louvre you can see some of his other loot. 1799 became a turning point for the Ottoman Empire and its peoples. The people started, in particular the Arab-speaking peoples of the Ottoman Empire, started what they called Asr al-Nahda in Arabic, which is the rebirth or reawakening, a phase of reawakening. With the clash with Europe, made them modernize in a Western way. So Westernization started from 1799. And at that time, also the Ottoman Empire started something else, and that is it started to use more violence and force against its own peoples, like those that it called millet, the constituent peoples of the empire. So it started to use more violence against its own peoples. And the empire kind of continued with changes and violence, and until the First World War, where it entered into the war inside of Germany and Austria-Hungarian Empire, and ended up in the the losing side. However, it gained immediate resurrection, so to speak, because of the October Revolution in Russia. In 1917, October 1917, Tsarist Russia had undergone a revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, and Sovietization afterwards. and the Allied forces against whom Turkey had fought, thought Turkey would be a good Soviet Union that had just began to be formed at the time. So instead of being a losing side, it became an ally of the Allied forces. But the empire did not remain an empire. The Arab world countries became part of different mandates taken by France or by England. For example, Syria and Lebanon until they gained their independence in 1943. And Iraq and other parts of the Gulf states were under British or English rule or mandate. And so the partition of the empire happened. However, Turkey survived as a strong state because of its geopolitical situation against being seen as something that would be helpful for the Allied forces against Soviet rule, or the spread of the ideas of communism into the other parts of the world. So that's how it happened. And then Turkey became part of NATO. And after the Second World War, and in terms of the impact of the Ottoman Empire, you can see it even today in Lebanon, where you have the concept of the millet very much enshrined in its political system. The Lebanese parliament is kind of, the seats are kind of divided, or the proportions are according to the different ethno-religious groupings within the country, and there are recognized, the government has recognized, or Lebanon recognizes 17 religious denominations, and they all have representation in its House of Commons or Parliament. And it led to also sectarian warfare in Lebanon from 1975 till 1990. It's religious ethnic groupings against each other. And in the Lebanese case, Christian versus Muslim. And so that's a kind of a heritage from the Ottoman Empire and its millet concept, which is the ethno-religious grouping as being being a legislative body, executive body, and responsible for its own education and for its judiciary system. So that's the concept which is still carried out in Lebanon, but not in the other Arab world countries, which were also part of the Ottoman Empire, but did not follow that system of millets. That may be because most of them were mostly homogeneous, although I would not say that, because Syria, for example, it has ethnic and religious groupings. It has Kurds, it has Alawites, it has Shia and Sunni, and but it followed a different path than the Ottoman millet system. So Lebanon followed it. And in terms of other concepts from the Ottoman Empire, after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1989, with the fall of the Berlin Wall, in Turkey, you had a new phase starting, and that's the idea of maintaining a strong influence over the Turkic peoples from the Balkan to the Central Asian territories. And beginning in the 1990s, there was a kind of a revival of getting back to the 19th century Ottoman Empire phase, and Turkic plus pan-Islamism, pan-Turkism and pan-Islamism got to be developed further starting in the 1990s, and it's very, very strong even as I speak today. And so people are speaking of Neo-Ottomanism these days, and it's not something new. It has been in the agenda since the 1990s, since the fall of the Soviet Union. And pan-Turkism is a very dangerous notion, and that one of my colleagues, Meir Amor, has it as one of the main reasons for the genocide committed against the Armenians by the Ottoman Empire in 1915 till 1922. So pan-Turkism is an idea that only Turkic peoples should be living in these territories, from the Balkans to the Central Asian region. So that non-Turkic peoples have no place in it, and they would be eliminated. And we saw this recently, last year in 2020, when Turkey and Azerbaijan is a Turkic state. The religion is though not Sunni but Shia. It doesn't matter for the Turkic government. They collaborated together to eliminate the Armenians in the territory called mountainous Karabakh. For Armenians, that territory is called Artsakh. And Artsakh was an autonomous territory within the Soviet Union. And when the Soviet Union collapsed, the people living there who were ethnically Armenian, they had a referendum and declared independence, but no one recognized the independence of Artsakh, not even the Republic of Armenia. So in 2020, the Turkish forces, which are a NATO member country, in combat, joined forces with Azerbaijan and attacked the tiny, very small Republic of Artsakh, and disseminated most of the population and took over 2/3 of the territory and annexed it to Azerbaijan, and are not very happy that there's still some Armenians living in the world today, and would like to eliminate the population of Armenia as well. And they are speaking, as I am giving this talk today, in annexing proper Republic of Armenia territories as well. And they're speaking of unification of Turkic peoples. And so we are the problem, that is, Armenians are the problem in this context. So pan-Turkism and pan-Islamism are the two notions that have emerged in this context, and they had also emerged towards the end of the actual Ottoman Empire. And the words of pan-Turkism have been, and pan-Islamism have been very much brought out by Erdogan. Erdogan, the current head of Turkey, was the mayor of Istanbul in the 1990s, from 1994 to 1998. In 2001, he founded the AKP, Justice and Development Party, which is the political party in Turkey. and he became Turkish Prime Minister in 2003 till 2014, and since 2014 he's the president of Turkey. So he's pro-pan-Turkism and pro-pan-Islamism and political Islam. And this is kind of counter to Turkey's foundation story of Kemal Atatürk. Atatürk was against both pan-Turkism and pan-Islamism. He secularized Turkey in 1923, and he wanted to have a kind of a nation state in the image of European nation states with no religion and a state as one. And however, gradually it became more and more Islamic. And in fact, the religious Sunni religious clerics are considered public servants in Turkey. So you have a kind of a situation where the Sunni clerics, the religious people, are public service people, administration. So that's something that one needs to think about when thinking of Western values and culture and so on and so forth. And Turkey, according to Turkish scholar Taner Akçam, is kind of getting away with all sorts of repression against its own citizens because it has the support of NATO. As a member of NATO, it has kind of support and is getting away with all sorts of ridiculous things. And in the current context of USA and Canada and others having pulled away from Afghanistan, for example, Canada pulled away many years ago in 2014, the United States more recently. However, President Biden gave all that territory, all of it, to Turkey. As a NATO member, Turkey has green light to be doing anything it wants from where it is situated to anywhere east or anywhere in North Africa or all of Africa, anywhere in the world. The current president of the United States of America, Joe Biden, he said all American troops have to be back in the United States of America, and America doesn't want to be involved in any other context in the world, not in peacekeeping, not in anything else. And it gave all its kind of mandate to Turkey. So, and Turkey is playing a very strange game as I speak. It has, as a member of NATO, done things that if any other NATO country had done would have been punished. It has purchased armaments and other things from Russia and is selling things to Russia. And even though there's an embargo against Russia and Putin by the United States, Turkey doesn't abide by these. So it's, and in addition, there's other things like the Kurds. Kurdistan was kind of sponsored by the United States of America. However, Turkey targets them every day. And it's recently committed, its forces committed genocide against the Yazidi population of the Middle East. And as I said, it attacks Kurds every day and Kurdistan every day. So, and these are kind of based on dreams of Neo-Ottomanism that Erdogan, the current president of Turkey, kind of sees himself as also the caliph, and as is having recently issues with Saudi Arabia, which may also have issues with the caliphate because they are not the true lineage that links them to the Prophet Muhammad. The Hashimi house is the true successor, but the Hashimi house of Jordan is not interested in these issues. So in terms of the legacies of Ottomanism, well, Erdogan is continuing the dream of establishing the Ottoman Empire and even expanding it with his two ideologies, pan-Turkism and pan-Islamism. Do you have any questions thus far?
Just
Yes.
unmute yourself and jump in, no problem.
Yeah, I first wanted to ask a question way back when about how the Bolshevik revolution time split up what used to be an empire. Was the split up a way to weaken the Islamic religion by splitting it into other countries, or it just was geographic, just where people were living? But it now it's my questions are kind of all morphing into even more complexity now. But anyway, that was my original question back then. That split around before Turkey was secularized.
Turkey, when it was part of the Ottoman Empire, was against Russia from the beginning. And you had the Crimean War, where England defended Turkey against Russia. So it has a long history. And while you were speaking, there was another question about Iran. Iran chose to be Shia Muslim rather than Sunni, to be separate from the Ottoman Empire. And Iran is these days seen as kind of is under blockade by the Western world. So it wants also a place for itself today in the context of the Neo-Ottomanism and the recent war and expansion of Turkey towards Azerbaijan and other Turkic places. And Iran is also worried about developments in that context. But it is really powerless, I think, and is also scared because Azerbaijan did not exist. It's a fake country, and it was in the northern part of Iran is the same people as in Azerbaijan. They are Turkic Azeris, Shia Turks, and so Iran is worried about that link of Turkey getting too much involved in that region. But in terms of the Soviet Union, when the revolution happened in 1917, that's when England, France, and other allied forces thought Turkey would be the best force to fight the spread of communism in other parts of the world. So they didn't trust Armenians who were there. And although Armenians were seen as part of the Allied forces at the time, as were Arabs. They were not seen as a good barrier against the spread of communism. Just like they didn't trust the Greeks because they thought the Greeks would be more in line with Russians and communism. They didn't trust the Greeks. So France and England decided, okay, the best bet would be to make sure Turkey gets all our support. And they established a strong Turkey I mean, no other time you would see this happening. If someone loses a war, someone doesn't get to be rewarded like that. They were so lucky that England and France at the time decided, oh yeah, the best bet for us to stop the spread of communism would be to support Kemalist Turkey. So that's the only reason. And at the time, they didn't care whether it was about Islam or Pan-Turkism. But after the fall of the Soviet Union, Turkey itself wanted to kind of reach out to all the other Turkic peoples that live from the current region of the Middle East to all the way to far east. There are many different Turkic peoples all the way to, but they didn't even help the Uyghurs. There's a genocide being committed by China against the Uyghurs, and the Turks did not help them. So there's a kind of a weird politics. So Turkism is good as long as it is to their own benefit, I guess.
Mhm.
Sam, did you want to expand on the question that you asked about Persia, or were you content with the answer so far?
Yeah, I mean, one of the questions I had is that I'm really not and that further to the east was the Persian Empire versus the Ottoman Empire, which was more, was west of the Persian Empire. And they were in conflict, I understood, but I didn't understand what that conflict was about. Was it strictly a religious Sunni conflict, or between the two main tenets of Islam? Was it more cultural because of the language differences, because it was non-Arab? Much of the Persian Empire was non-Arab. So I was just trying to get that to be explained a little better, because I don't understand that. And I think I better now that my daughter is married to an Iranian.
Well, Iran is a very complex context as well, because earlier than the Ottoman Empire's existence, you had the Mongolian invasions, and some of them Turkic people came in Turkoman and took over Persian culture and language, and some of them went back, and you had the establishment of Mughal India by the kind of Persianized Turkoman peoples. And you have the beautiful Taj Mahal in India made by them, and other major things of Mughal Indian heritage. But these were kind of weird. They took on the Persian culture, the language, the civilization, everything, and then went back towards the east, but settled in India for a while and established the Mughal Empire. So Iran has multiple cultures and but its main religion is Shia, but it wasn't originally Shia because Shiaism did not spread in any part of the world when it first emerged. This is after the death of the Prophet Muhammad. There were 4 caliphs elected to be his successors. Afterwards, there was a kind of a debate whether Ali bin Abi Talib's sons, Hassan and Hussein, should be inheriting the succession or the caliphate. And the Umayya side decided against it. And there was a big war or battle and fight where they were killed, the sons were killed of Ali bin Abi Talib. And that's where those who carried the bodies of the slain sons called themselves Shia. And they were not engaged in any kind of missionary activities to make people become Shia. But afterwards, when the Ottoman Empire emerged and took Sunni Islam to be its religion, Iran decided to change and adopted Shiaism on its own by the Shah of Iran. So it was to distinguish itself from the other empire. That's the only way. It wasn't originally, they were not originally Shia, because as I said, Shiaism did not spread anywhere except where it was, and it was in the Arab world at the beginning. And Iran is not Arab, Turkey is not Arab. And Persians were close to Armenians, they were Indo-European, and but they had the Turkmen invasion, and you have many Turkomans in the northern part, like Azeri live in northern Iran. Capital part of that region is Tabriz. Tabriz is where they are concentrated, and it's by the Caspian Sea region. But the rest of Iran, you have other nationalities or cultural groups, but most of them were Persian.
The relationship
Anyway, I'm not sure
in northern India. I mean, that would happen before there was even before there was a breakup and Pakistan was created.
This was thousands of years ago, maybe a long time ago.
Yeah.
India, it's
Okay.
very old. The Pakistan and Bangladesh are post 1947.
Okay.
The partition is 1947, 1948, 1947. So it's the Mughal India was before the British came. Before the British East India Company came.
Sima, I
Okay.
have a question about modern day colonialism and what the United States, in your estimation, how do you think, like how much power does the US or other colonial powers invest in the Middle East and sort of local policemen? What would be like the percentage or the amount of power given to Turkey as versus Saudi Arabia versus Israel versus Pakistan? I don't know if you have any feel for that or.
Yeah, my view is that United States is doing things through proxy, like it delegates others, Israel, Turkey, with Saudi money and with Arab Emirates money. So the finances are from Saudis, the Emirates, Qatar, Doha, all these places, the little tiny states that have lots of petrol money, oil money. So these provide the funding, and main players are Israel. Now Israel is has made peace and is working in close collaboration with the Emirates. The Arab oil money is being used by Israel. And so Saudi Arabia, the Arab oil money people, and Turkey work together, even though there may have been some sort of pretense that Turkey is against Israel. It's not true. They work together. Once in a while, Turkey's Erdogan says, I'm supporting the Palestinians. That's not true. Once in a while, they would have some sort of, I don't know, like drama or something, theater or play, saying, oh, we're supporting the oppressed peoples. It's not true. And they are the kind of puppets of United States of America. And America does not do things directly. It does it through delegation. In particular with Biden. Biden's policy is use others for its own work. And France was the mandate, for example, for Lebanon and Syria. But when the Beirut explosion happened, I'm not sure if any of you followed that, Macron went there in person and then was thrown out. He's out of the picture. He couldn't do anything because the United States has put an embargo and blockade of all the Lebanese banks, the banking system of Lebanon, because they think Syria may benefit from Lebanon because Syria has a share in the port of Lebanon, and because also the Shia of Lebanon gets support from Iran. So there's a kind of the blockade, the economic hardship of Lebanon is from the United States of America. And now Turkey is inside Lebanon, in the northern part of Lebanon, in Tripoli, Tarablos, and Akkar. So Turkey is already inside, and there's the, I don't know how to put it, indirect rule of the United States, but the United States is blocking all the finances of Lebanon. The banks cannot do anything because of the blockade. And the people of Lebanon don't know, they don't even understand what's happening. A few months ago, a cargo of oil came in from Iran and it was blown out, exploded. And the people were suffering. They didn't have any gas to put in their cars. They didn't have electricity because it is also based on oil products. But the people don't understand that it is the United States who's doing this. They blame something else. They blame their own government.
What is the relationship between, I'm just asking as a dum-dum, between Lebanon and, like, going back to the Persian Empire and Iran right now? Like, what you said, Iran doesn't wield a lot of power in the region, but that there's some kind of, what is the US afraid of with Iran?
Iran is, well, it goes back to the time of the Shah regime. The last Shah was supposedly pro-American, but it is the Europeans and Americans that overthrew the regime. And Khomeini was in Paris in exile, and they helped Khomeini get to Iran. So I have doubts about who is on whose side, but many Iranians themselves would argue that because Iran had become very economically strong during the Shah's time, it had industrialized, they were making cars in Iran. The same in Egypt, for example, they were making cars in Egypt and refrigerators, household appliances, etc. And then you had counter movements against Egypt as well, and against Iran. In this case, the Shah was overthrown, and then you had Khomeini. And then what happened was all the Iranian government money, their treasury, is held by the United States of America, still is in the United States of America. So US is holding Iranian money, is not giving it back to the people of Iran. And I'm not sure why this hatred towards the Shia wing of Islam, and the Shia are suffering. In Yemen, for example, the Saudis are attacking Yemen for a long period of time now, and the children of Yemen are suffering. There's a whole Shia versus Sunni war that is happening. The Shia are a minority in the world. They're not the majority, as I said, because there was no missionary activity to make people convert into Shiaism. It just happened once. Only Iran decided to do it against the Ottoman Empire, to kind of have a distinct identity in terms of its religion. But that's it. Nobody else forced anyone to be Shia. But Sunni spread in the whole world. You have African countries, you go there, you will see Sunni converts all the time. And Ethiopia, for example, it used to be Christian, and now it's a majority Islam. And the current head that now targeted the Tigray is named Muhammad or Ahmad, a Muslim. Haile Selassie was a Christian anyway. So just saying, Islam is, Sunni Islam is really having lots of converts in Africa. The other element is China. China is investing a lot in Africa for a long time now. They invested in coffee plantations, in anything you can think of. They make highways, they, yeah. But again, the United States is now seeing China as the enemy, but it's not the enemy. China is just non-military and is into investments, and is also, United States is dependent on Chinese cheap labor. So I'm not sure how to explain these things, but colonial, post-colonial, we're still in a colonial system. We live in a white settler colony. I mean, Canada is a white settler colony, so is the United States of America. And now there was another trend people were talking about, that's the Anglo white settler colonies are having a new alliance with the new deal against France, Australia, United States, and England made a deal to make the nuclear submarines for Australia against China. And that upset France because it had a deal in 2016 signed with Australia to make the same submarines. So they lost the deal, even though, yeah, and people began to be speaking about, okay, making new alliances that are linguistic based, like Anglo word versus Francophones. I'm not sure how to explain it, but this is in the context of post-colonialities or still colonialities. I'm not sure.
I'm just going to ask if Marguerite or Maureen had questions, or Sam other questions.
No, I don't have any questions. I'm just learning a lot. It's extremely interesting. I've been trying to look on my phone as a map of those regions and just refamiliarizing myself with the countries and stuff. Quite amazing history. You know, history lives, it's not dead. Right. Yeah,
Yes.
great. Very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
Marguerite, I'm not sure if you can hear us or if you're on, if you have any questions. She's representing the French bloc in this against the English, but I'm not sure if she's able to hear or speak. But I had a corollary question while Marguerite may be coming on, about the Shia. Are they still associated with, for some reason by the US, with communism? So I know that there's like a progressive sort of populist trend amongst the Shia.
The Shia were based in Lebanon on being deprivation and of being oppressed. So they were the oppressed group within Islam, or they saw themselves as being the oppressed. And I'm not sure if the US sees it that way, or it's just because of the money they take from the Sunni Saudis and the Gulf countries that makes it the enemy of the Shia. I don't think they are too deep into analysis of the ideologies behind Shiaism. Yeah. But in Lebanon, they are very well organized and they have their own medical system, education system. And their women are very much active politically and in many different ways. And they don't cover the face, but they have a eshar, which is the head, like, and they wear pants and tunics to make the movement more easy. And they were very active in even in military ways. So that they are kind of liberated, so to speak. And the Shia in Lebanon are the most well-read. They are literate. They read everything. And they are the most in numbers.
Sam, did you have another question?
Yeah, is what's happening with China in Africa and actually in South America too? Are they really acting, going back to the colonial model that exploited much of Africa and South America? Yeah, it seems to me that that's the model they're using, that they're primarily doing it to capture raw materials as the colonial empires did in the 18th century and 19th century.
I'm not sure if
true.
they are.
Is that a good take?
It is and it isn't, because Chinese way of doing it is not, it's rather different. They're not using any force, like military force. Colonial systems in the past used the military power as well as they established settler colonies and farming, etc., and used the Bible and the gun to conquer the peoples that they exploited, and took over the materials and economic gains, etc. China is doing it in a very different way, in like a state capitalist way of anything that is profitable. So it is to make a profit, and it is to kind of explore further the kind of new Chinese state capitalism. I think it's doing it without force, without
Right,
military
yes.
force.
Yeah, they're using their economic power and technical know-how
Yes,
to entice rather than using force and religion to
exactly. Yeah, they're not using the Bible and the gun. No, it's a very
right.
different way. Yeah, it's and sometimes it is also doing it in a way to help. Like if, let's say, a government is putting out something like they put a call for, okay, we want to have the least expensive way to make this highway. It is the Chinese who are winning these. What do you call them? I'm not sure.
Bid?
The bids, yes, they're gaining the bids because they put the kind of most sensible packages for deals to make highways or other things for development projects.
Yeah,
So
they're helping the infrastructure in most of those places.
yes,
And to be able to do what they want to do economically and that kind of thing as an aid to their further reach and entrenchment into their societies.
yeah, but it's a
Okay.
different. It's very different than the old ways of colonialism.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. I guess, the entirely different question is, I was a couple minutes late. In this whole area, what's going to happen with the Kurds going forward there? I mean, the Kurds in Turkey, the Kurds in Iraq, and all over the area, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. And how do you see that moving forward?
Yes, the Kurdish situation is a very difficult one. And given that Biden administration is giving the green light to Turkey to attack the Kurds anywhere, I'm not very kind of optimistic about what will happen to the Kurds. But I wish the old Sevr Treaty that was established right after the First World War with armistice, if that plan is pushed, then the Kurds would have their own Kurdistan, and the territory is quite big. They live in Iraq, Syria, current Turkey, and parts of Iran. So they have a huge population, and the Kurdistan that they have now is very small and is not even viable and is under constant threat and attack. So I really wish the Treaty of Sevr comes to light again from 1918, 1919 period, but no one is speaking about it. Turkey doesn't want it because it would mean loss of more land for Turkey. As long as the United States and NATO support Turkey, we will not see a good Kurdistan emerging anywhere anytime soon. Sorry for that.
Sima, in the last few minutes, I had a question, and if Marguerite or Maureen or Sam has another question, go ahead. But I'll just ask it if you don't have another one. I'll ask it anyway. You had mentioned, I wanted you to explore very briefly, you had mentioned how Turkey is oppressing its own civilian population. And can you explore how that affects their policy in the region with other peoples?
The citizens of Turkey have always been under oppressive systems, one after the other. And the current Erdogan regime is not any different from the previous ones. It has it does not allow for freedom of speech, even though it says it does. It only supports Sunni Islam, not other types of Islam. The Alawites, who are 11 million, don't have any say and don't have any power and are oppressed. And the other minorities, including the whatever Greeks remain, whatever Assyrians remain, they've been oppressed. They cannot, let's say, if they need renovations for a church, they cannot do it, the Assyrians and the Greeks. The same is true for the Armenians and remaining Armenians there. And the Kurds, they've been persecuted for a long time, and militarily, they attacked them militarily, like with tanks and airplanes. And so it's an oppressive system, but it is being supported by NATO and the United States of America. And as long as these countries support these regimes, nothing will change. I mean, they cannot read the people in Turkey, and many writers get to be taken to court for saying bad things supposedly about Turkey or Turkey's president or something. It may not even be true, like a case of Elif Shafak. I'm not sure if you have seen her novels. One of them is called The Bastard of Istanbul. She was tried because in one of her fictitious novels, one fictitious character had mentioned the Armenians. She was tried in court. So the same is true of Nobel Prize winner Orhan Pamuk. He was tried for being against Turkey, for mentioning in his book Snow, the novel about the region of Kars, for mentioning that there used to be Armenians here. Just by saying it, he was tried and jailed, even though he was a Nobel winner, a prize-winning author, writer. So as long as, according to Taner Akşam, as long as United States of America, NATO, Europe, etc., are supporting this regime, this Turkey, nothing will change. So it's a fake democracy. It's not a democracy.
Is there any way that it can become more secular again?
Secular, I don't know, no, because the trend for Islamism is very strong. Before, no one used to wear any kind of headdress or something, nothing, no religious thing. Now everyone is becoming more and more religious in the whole region. The same is true for the Arab world countries. One of my friends was saying before in Egyptian TV, you would never have seen some head cover for women, but nowadays it's the norm. The Arab Spring, or so-called Arab Spring, did not lead to spring. It led to oppression and collapse.
So you
I'm
think
not sure.
Islamism is winning over whatever Ottomanism, but Ottomanism in the secular sense of Ataturk?
Yeah, yes, exactly. The thing which is winning is pan-Islamism and pan-Turkism, which is extreme racism. Pan-Turkism is extreme racism, and pan-Islamism is political Islam. These two are the things that are winning, unfortunately.
Thank you so much.
And thank you. I'm sorry for the technical issues and problems. And you can, whoever wants to, you can email the slides that I had sent you in PDF format before.
Sure. Thank you so much. Marguerite, Maureen, Sam, any final questions before we thank Sima and let her go?
No questions. I really enjoyed this talk. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. So Turkish Neo-Ottomanism is about reviving Greater Turkey, and yeah, but it is really focusing on political Islam and Pan-Turkism. So thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Sima. Thank you so much for sharing your time at this during the holiday season, for making that sacrifice.
Thank you.
Enjoyed it. It's been recorded at least the second time round, and we'll make it
Okay.
available, and I will send you the link.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aprahamian.
Thank you, Galima, and thank you everyone, and for the group too. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Bye. Thanks for attending.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.